Once upon a time, in a bright and joyful village, lived a kind couple named Chitty and Amaka. They had a cozy little house full of love, but no children to share it with. Chitty and Amaka wished very much for a child to fill their home with laughter and joy. One day, they decided to visit an orphanage, where children without mothers and fathers lived. There, they met a little girl named Yugo. Yugo had a big smile and kind eyes that sparkled like stars. When Amaka and Chitty saw her, their hearts filled with warmth and happiness. "Hello, Yugo," said Amaka with a gentle smile. "Hi," Yugo replied, with a voice as cheerful as a songbird. Chitty and Amaka played with Yugo, and they all laughed together. It was like magic. They felt that Yugo was the missing piece of their family puzzle. So, they made a big decision. "Would you like to come live with us in our cozy little house?" Chitty asked, full of hope. Yugo's eyes shone and she nodded, feeling extremely happy. "Yes, please," she said, jumping with excitement. And so, Chitty and Amaka took Yugo's hand and together, they walked back home, ready to start a new life full of adventures and love. Yugo was no longer just a little girl in the orphanage. She was now a beloved daughter in a family that chose her with all their hearts. From then on, their home was never quiet again. It was filled with laughter, singing, and the sound of little feet running, creating happy memories in the cozy little house. Yugo quickly felt that she always belonged with Chitty and Amaka. Every morning, she woke up to warm hugs and the wonderful smell of breakfast. Amaka taught Yugo to cook, and Chitty showed her how to plant flowers that danced in the sun. Yugo's days were full of new things to learn and do, and every night she fell asleep listening to Amaka's stories about stars whispering to the moon. One day, Amaka brought very special news. "Yugo, you're going to be a big sister," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Yugo's heart jumped with joy. "Really?" she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Yes, really," Chitty laughed, lifting Yugo into the air. Not just one baby, but two. A few months later, the house was filled with even more laughter and tiny cries. Amaka and Chitty welcomed twin daughters, Uchi and Ibu. The twins had curly hair and laughed like little bells. Yugo loved her new sisters immediately. She helped Amaka care for the little socks and sang lullabies that made the twins wiggle and smile. The house felt more complete with Uchi and Ibu. Every corner echoed with the sounds of laughter and babbling. Yugo showed her sisters how to make funny faces and blow raspberries. At night, the family cuddled up with the twins between them, while Chitty read stories about brave knights and clever princesses. As the days passed, Yugo felt more and more part of this wonderful family. Amaka and Chitty made sure Yugo knew how much they loved her, and Yugo loved her sisters so much that she couldn't remember a time before them. The family's happiness grew like the flowers in their garden, shining under the warmth of the sun. Then, on a windy night, something very sad happened. Chitty and Amaka were returning from the market when their car had a serious accident. It was so sudden that everyone in the village felt a chill that night. The cozy little house did not hear bedtime stories or see smiles. Chitty and Amaka were gone, leaving Yugo, Uchi, and Ibu alone. The following days were quiet and gray. The sisters hugged each other a lot, trying to understand why their parents would not come home. Yugo, being the oldest, tried to be strong for Uchi and Ibu. She wiped their tears and made porridge, but when she was alone, Yugo looked at the stars and whispered, "I miss you, Mommy and Daddy." Although their hearts were heavy, there was still a farm to take care of. The farm was full of clucking chickens, mooing cows, and fields of vegetables that needed tending. Chitty and Amaka loved the farm, and now it was all that was left for the sisters. With the changing seasons, the farm continued to support the sisters. They sold eggs, milk, and fresh vegetables at the market. The villagers loved their products and often asked, "How are you, little ones?" The sisters smiled and replied, "We're fine, thank you." Managing the farm was not easy, but it helped Yugo, Uchi, and Ibu feel closer to their parents. Every plucked vegetable and every harvested crop was a reminder of the love and lessons their parents had taught them. The farm was not just a place to live, it was a place that held their family's heart and hope. With each other's support, the sisters slowly found a way to smile again. They knew their parents were watching over them from the stars, proud of their brave and strong girls who kept the farm and their love alive. One sunny afternoon, the sisters invited all their relatives for a big family gathering at the farm. Everyone was there, laughing and sharing stories under the big oak tree. Yugo, Uchi, and Ibu wanted to feel close to their family, just like in the old days when Chidi and Amaka were there. Adaku, who wore a big colorful hat, smiled a lot, but her eyes didn't smile like her mouth. After a big lunch of roasted chicken and fresh corn, when everyone was sitting, Adaku stood up. She cleared her throat loudly, and all the chatter stopped. Everyone looked at her. "I have something very important to say," began Adaku, with a serious voice. "It's about Yugo." She paused, looking around at the curious faces. Yugo felt a strange sensation in her stomach, like when you're about to go down a big slide. Adaku continued, "Yugo here, well, she's not really Chidi and Amaka's daughter. She was adopted." Whispers ran through the crowd like busy bees. Yugo's heart sank. She looked at her sisters, who held her hands tightly. Adaku went on, with a voice sharp as a knife, "I believe Yugo is trying to take everything from Uchi and Ibu. She wants the farm and all the fortune for herself." Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Yugo felt tears sting her eyes. It wasn't true, she loved her sisters more than anything. But Adaku's words were like seeds of doubt, and soon the whispers turned into loud questions and angry looks from some of the relatives. Uchi stood up, her face as red as the tomatoes they grew. "That's not true," she shouted. Ibu also stood up, nodding vigorously. "Yugo is our sister, no matter what." But the poison of greed had already started to work. The relatives began arguing, some saying they should investigate more, others agreeing with everything Adaku said. The happy gathering turned sour, and the family felt divided. As the sun set, the party ended, leaving behind a mess of hurt feelings and uneaten cake. Yugo, Uchi, and Ibu sat under the old oak tree, holding each other. They knew their family was about to go through a tough time. Yugo felt deep sadness, worried that Adaku's lies might take away not just the farm but her family too. However, looking at her sisters, she knew they would face whatever came next together. After the family gathering, things didn't go back to normal. The whispers and stares from the relatives grew louder and sharper each day. Adaku's words, like thorns, had planted themselves deeply within the family, and doubts about Yugo spread like wild weeds. In the weeks that followed, more and more relatives began to turn against Yugo. They visited the farm less often, and when they did, their smiles were tight and their conversations short. Yugo felt the weight of their suspicion every day, hanging around her like a cold fog. One particularly chilly morning, some of the aunts and uncles came to the farm, but not for a friendly visit. They stood stiffly, their faces stern and unforgiving, as Adaku spoke for them all. "Yugo," she began with a cold voice, "it's best for the family if you leave the farm. We can't have someone who might be plotting against her own sisters living here." Uchi and Ibu cried out in protest. "No, Yugo wouldn't do anything like that," exclaimed Uchi, with a voice firm with loyalty. "Yes, she loves us. She loves the farm." "You can't make her leave," added Ibu, her young voice cracking under the strain. But the relatives wouldn't listen. Their minds were poisoned by greed and suspicion, fed by Adaku's malicious words. They believed that removing Yugo was the only way to protect the family's assets. Yugo stood there, her heart breaking into pieces. She looked into the faces of her family, searching for some sign of trust or love, but all she saw were cold eyes and closed hearts. With a heavy heart, Yugo packed a small bag with her most cherished belongings, a picture of her with Chidi and Amaka, her favorite book, and the little wooden horse Chidi had carved for her. "I love you, Uchi and Ibu," she said, hugging her sisters tightly, her voice a whisper among the shouting. "Remember, no matter what, I will always be your sister." With tears streaming down her face, Yugo walked away from the farm, the only home she had ever known. Behind her, Uchi and Ibu cried, their sobs echoing in Yugo's ears as she walked into an uncertain future, alone and betrayed. Yugo wandered far from the village where she grew up. She found herself in a smaller, quieter place, where nobody knew her name. The days were long and the nights even longer. Yugo missed her sisters terribly and often sat under the stars, hoping they were looking at the same sky. Finding work was hard, but Yugo was determined. She remembered everything Chitty had taught her about growing things. So she found a little piece of land on the edge of the village and started growing vegetables. Her hands became rough from the soil, and her face tanned under the sun, but watching things grow made her feel a little bit closer to home. Yugo sold her vegetables at the local market. She didn't earn much, but it was enough to buy food and rent a small room at an old inn. The innkeeper was a kind woman who reminded Yugo of Amaka. She didn't say much, but her gentle nods and warm porridge made Yugo feel welcome. Even though she was making ends meet, life was not easy. Yugo missed the laughter of Uchi and Ibu, the comfort of their big cozy kitchen, and the safety of her own bed. But she never let her hardships turn her heart cold. She shared what little she had with others who were struggling, remembering how her parents had taught her to be kind and generous. Every night before falling asleep, Yugo would think about her sisters. She hoped they were safe and happy. She hoped they knew she didn't leave because she wanted to, and above all, she hoped that one day they would understand why things happened the way they did and would forgive her for leaving. Yugo kept a little diary, writing down her thoughts and feelings. She wrote about her new life, the people she met, and her dreams of returning home. She wrote about her love for her sisters and how she wished to see them again. With each word, she sent a silent wish into the world, hoping it would find its way to Uchi and Ibu. As the seasons changed, Yugo grew stronger. The hardship molded her like river stones, smooth and enduring. She knew that no matter what, she had to maintain her integrity and keep her hopes alive for a future where she could be reunited with her family. And so with each passing day, Yugo worked, waited, and hoped for a chance to go back home and embrace her sisters once more. Back at the farm, Uchi and Ibu felt the emptiness left by Yugo's absence. Each day seemed grayer than the last, and the laughter that once filled the farmhouse was now silent. Yet amidst their sadness, the sisters grew increasingly aware of the relatives' true intentions. Uchi and Ibu decided to test the sincerity of the aunts and uncles who had been so quick to believe Adaku and cast Yugo away. They pretended to be naive and unsure about managing the farm, watching closely how their relatives reacted. One evening, during a casual talk with the relatives, Ibu mentioned, "We're just not sure if we can handle all of Daddy's business on our own. It's all so overwhelming for us." Her voice wavered just enough to sound convincingly distressed. The relatives exchanged quick glances, and Adaku, always eager to take control, spoke up. "Well, perhaps it's time to consider selling some of the land. It would certainly lighten your burden, and we can help manage the finances from the sale." Uchi frowned, pretending to consider the idea. "I suppose that could work. We just want what's best for the family," she said, her words baited, and many of the relatives took it eagerly. Over the next few weeks, Uchi and Ibu observed their relatives discussing plans among themselves, often suggesting ways to break off pieces of the farm for sale. The sisters pretended to agree but never signed any papers or made any deals. They noticed how some relatives, who had never shown interest in the farm's workings, suddenly had many ideas about improving the farm, which always involved selling valuable assets or cutting costs that affected the workers' livelihoods. The final confirmation of their relatives' greed came when they overheard a conversation between Adaku and Uncle Joe. They were in the barn, speaking in hushed, eager tones. "Once the girls agree to sell the north field, we can push them for the orchards next. They don't know the value of what they have. We'll make a fortune." Hearing this, Uchi and Ibu felt a cold wave of realization wash over them. The relatives didn't care about the legacy their parents wanted to leave them. They only cared about how much money they could make from it. That night, in the privacy of their room, the sisters held each other, the decision clear. "We need to find Yugo," Uchi whispered fiercely. "She's the only one we can trust, the only one who truly loves this place like we do." Ibu nodded, her resolve hardening. "We'll bring her back, and together we'll protect what Mom and Dad built. It's time we stand up to them, for Yugo, for us, and for the farm." With heavy hearts but a clear purpose, Uchi and Ibu began planning how to reconnect with Yugo, unaware of how much she longed to return. Their bond, forged in the face of deceit and betrayal, became their strength, and they resolved to reunite their family. In the cool light of dawn, Uchi and Ibu stood at the edge of their farm, looking out over the fields that stretched toward the horizon. They knew what they had to do: find Yugo and bring her home. Their hearts were heavy with regret for not having defended Yugo stronger when she needed them most. Now they were determined to make things right. Their first step was to gather any information they could about Yugo's whereabouts. They remembered the small inn at the edge of a nearby village where Yugo had mentioned finding work. With hopeful hearts, they set out, walking the paths once trodden by their sister. Arriving at the village, Uchi and Ibu went straight to the inn. The old innkeeper, a kind woman with a gentle smile, recognized the girls from Yugo's descriptions. "Oh, you must be Uchi and Ibu," she said warmly. "Yugo spoke of you often, with such love." The sisters felt a pang of sadness mixed with relief. They were on the right track. "Please, do you know where she is now?" "We need to find her," asked Ibu urgently. The innkeeper nodded, understanding the seriousness of their request. "Yugo left a few weeks ago," she explained. "She found a small piece of land to farm just south of here. She's been living there, trying to make her own way." Thanking the innkeeper, Uchi and Ibu hurried south, following the directions given. The journey was tough, their anxiety growing with each step, but the thought of seeing Yugo again pushed them forward. After hours of walking, they finally saw a small plot of land that was clearly well tended, with rows of vegetables growing neatly. And there, in the middle of the field, was Yugo. Her back was to them, but they would recognize her anywhere. She was bent over a row of plants, her figure strong and determined. "Ibu," called Uchi, unable to hold back her excitement. Yugo turned around, and upon seeing her sisters, her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, all at once, they ran towards each other, meeting in an embrace that spoke of love and forgiveness. "I'm so sorry," said Uchi, holding Yugo tightly. "We should have never let them send you away." Yugo shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "No, I should have stayed and fought, but I'm just so glad you're here now." Yugo's leadership was pivotal. Her calm demeanor and clear vision in the face of challenges inspired everyone working on the farm. Workers who had been with the family for years felt a renewed sense of purpose and pride in their work. They were not just growing crops, they were part of a mission to create something good and lasting. One bright day, as the leaves painted the farm in hues of gold and red, some of the relatives made their way back to the farm. They came not with claims or demands, but with heads bowed, carrying the weight of their past actions. Adaku was the first to speak, as they stood before Yugo, Uchi, and Ibu, who were gathered in the farmhouse's vibrant garden, surrounded by the fruits of their labor. "We were wrong," admitted Adaku, her voice quivering slightly, a stark contrast to her usual confidence. "Your parents would have been proud of what you've accomplished here, and we let greed blind us to that truth." The other relatives nodded, each taking a turn to express their remorse. "We see now how much this farm and your family mean to the community. You've restored its spirit, and in doing so, reminded us of the values Chidi and Amaka stood for," added another uncle, his eyes meeting the sisters' steady gazes. Yugo, who had learned much about forgiveness and the strength it required during her time apart from the family, felt a softening in her heart. She looked to Uchi and Ibu, finding silent agreement in their eyes. "We appreciate your words," Yugo responded, her voice firm yet kind. "Our parents taught us to value family and forgiveness. We hope that moving forward we can all remember the importance of these bonds and work together to support not just the farm but each other." The relatives agreed, expressing a desire to help in any way they could. Over the following weeks, they participated in farm activities, contributing genuinely to its operations. They helped during the harvest season and joined in community events that the sisters organized. This participation wasn't just about redemption for their past misdeeds, but a genuine effort to be part of the farm's and the family's future. Achi and Ibu found comfort in the healed relationships, witnessing the positive changes in their aunts and uncles. The family gatherings now echoed with real laughter and shared stories, knitting the fabric of the family back together. As the night deepened, they remained on the porch, sharing stories and plans, laughing and occasionally wiping away a tear. The farm around them buzzed with the quiet sounds of night, crickets chirping and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. As the sisters finally said goodnight, retreating into the house that had been their childhood home and now their adult stronghold, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as a family, united and strong. The legacy of their farm and their family was not just preserved, it was thriving, a beacon of hope and a symbol of what can be accomplished when hearts are set on preserving the goodness of the past while building a vibrant future. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment on what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales like this one. Thank you.